Are you kidding me? That's what?
Yeah, every so often it happens that Ryan is right.
100% right. Not even a little bit right.
Tucker Pullman, 2 points last game.
No kidding. My man.
Hey, neither does me running shirtless, but that turned out very well.
It
so.
did. That,
Welcome to the PP1 podcast.
So, I mean, that's the first time we've done the new intro.
I haven't seen that yet. I don't know if I approved all of those picks.
You literally said, hey, it looks great. Although you did say, I haven't been getting a lot of your videos, so I don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is the new PP1 podcast look. We are joined by Ryan Henderson. He's probably the most popular member of, even though it says Donnie and Dhali on the header, on the marquee, anybody that's listened to that show over the years from 1040 and now I'm on check, we know who runs. We know the run.
Best looking for sure. It's not even close. That
well,
I can promise.
I mean, I was gonna say, like, you know, they haven't really exactly set the bar too high, but
Tallest.
Allowing those two mugs in high definition every day is pretty. It's an interesting call, let me tell you.
No kidding. Welcome to the show, Ryan.
Thank you for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Ted, how you're looking good as well. You're looking very very shiny today.
Okay. Thanks.
You've got a new shine to you. We're part of Crier Media. You can download us and all that sort of thing on Apple and Spotify and all the places you would listen to you orally, like with an A. We're also on Facebook Live tonight, YouTube as well. You can join along in the chat. Ryan's clearly going to have a lot of people. We may get nobody, and that's okay too. If you want to comment along, that's great. If you don't, well, that's fine too. We've got some stuff. We've got new colors. We've got a new look. We've kind of shed. I was going to wear my mint hoodie, and I just thought, well, that defeats the purpose of showing off new stuff. We have a bit of a new look. It doesn't mean that we're going to sound but we're going to look a little bit different. Someone that's going to look a little bit different in the next little bit is Ryan. You're gonna get the whole show to just gloat about yourself. But Ted's got some big news today. If you guys have been following on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or wherever you happen to follow Ted's antics, he's had a big week because we all know that he's going in for heart surgery soon. And if you guys saw, he posted a little clip of his little throttle valve there, the Throttle Body 5000. They might even have it close to him. I'm not even sure.
It's a Binford. It's probably a Binford thing.
Binford? Oh, perfect. Yeah. Well, you know it's quality if it's a Binford. Like, do you get more like flow blood per 60 with that thing, or?
I think probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They
don't call it. It's a mechanical valve. So I think if it's a mechanical valve versus a pig valve, then I think that you have to go mechanical because its flow per 60 would be. It's science.
Less. Okay, that makes sense. So anyway, things are looking good for you. You're gonna have
things are looking good.
Surgery's gonna be sooner than later, which is great, and you'll be back. I'm like, this is what I've been thinking about, and these are the questions that go through my head. If you were saying like how your heart rate is or your heart operation is like a lot less than a lot of us, I've seen you play sports, Ryan. First of all, Ted is like, well, if you ever see like workout videos online, he's a piece of work. He's built like a freaking brick house, and like he demolishes sports however he pleases. So if you had more blood flow, more energy, more life, I can only imagine that we've only seen the beginning of Ted Wong's sports.
Yeah, I'm peaking at 41. I think that's probably what happened, right?
Or that.
I think probably it's going to give me a couple more years at 41. Maybe that's what it'll be in the sports landscape.
That's good enough, Ryan. You got a good
But I'll
heart?
take all the compliments. Thank you.
Yeah, Ryan, you got a good heart. Things are going well.
Sure.
Okay.
As good as it can be, I think.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's excellent. Ted, again, congratulations. That's a pretty huge,
thanks, buddy.
Huge thing. So
yeah, we've been waiting for news like that for a while now. So I'm happy to get that one off my plate, and less unknowns and more information is always good. Just like all of us want that, right? So I'm happy that one's done and out of the way, and we can just sort of look forward to getting that thing booked now.
I'm excited for you. But enough about us. We've got a guest. he's been on Dolly. He's been involved with Donnie and Dhali. He's been involved with, I mean, the life of 1040 that we all put on high regard for so many reasons. Because basically, if you are involved in Vancouver sports, likely you know this man, Ryan. First of all, how do you get along with Don Taylor and Rick Dhaliwal? Like that seems. I know what you do for a job, but it seems like that's a job that entails so much more than any other producer job, because it feels like, I mean, things could go off the rails at any second with those guys. I mean, clearly they do. So
Yeah, it's I always say that I'm a babysitter. That's one of the roles as a producer.
For every producer, though.
Yeah, pretty much. It's funny because it's basically it's the same on the air as it is off the air with those guys. Like
yeah,
it's not too different. So it's like, you know, it's weird. It's hard to find the separation line between when I'm working and when I'm not working, because it's so similar. And I've worked, especially with Donnie, I've worked with him so long now that I can see like down the railroad track of where
Yeah.
his mind's going. I know where he's about to go, or the one-liner that's about to come now at this point.
yeah, you can. I
So
think you can tell as a listener and a viewer too, right? Like we all know, like
yeah,
something's about to happen. Maybe
yeah,
go to a
yeah,
different.
yeah. If you followed him for long enough, you can tell where he's about to take things. So
Yeah.
it's got its challenges every now and then, but it's a pretty freaking great job, let me tell you.
No kidding. Did
Yeah.
Rick give you any like leaks for tonight at all about any trades we're going to hear about?
He didn't give me anything. In fact, we came into the studio this morning. It's because it seemed like a bit of a kind of a lullish day today. It was kind of, what are we going to talk about? There's not a ton of hot button things. And so, like, we asked him, you got any updates? And he said, no, it's quiet. So that was great.
Yeah.
He spends all his time on his cell phone and they still got nothing for us. But yeah, no, I've got nothing. I know the same as everyone else. So
That's really too bad. That was going to be,
yeah.
I was hoping to vamp on that for the next 25 minutes. So this could be a lot
I was
short.
hoping I was going to have something for you guys to break tonight on this, but
Yeah.
nope, nothing.
No
Nothing.
JT
What do you-
Miller, Patrick
what do you-
Kane.
Yeah, the Kane thing is also kind of wild too. But like, what are you
Yeah.
feeling on the Canucks run? Because I feel like it really has changed like every single day, right? There's like, oh, like we're talking about like, oh, you know, the conversation's getting bigger. There's more teams, you know, kicking tires on Miller, or it sounds like, you know, there's possibility that the trade for Minnesota could happen, but it would involve, you know, some money coming back and some creativity on the things. But this regime hasn't been like super creative over the last little while, so occasionally makes you wonder if that's possible or not. And then obviously the Luke Shen thing, right? I mean, there's talk the last couple of days about, you know, is it a fourth or a third? Now is it a third or a second? And now they're talking about possibly even rolling Shen into another deal to weaponize cap space, is like the big thing that everybody likes to talk about.
Yep.
But I mean, it's changed so much over the last little while. I mean, do you think out of all the possible outcomes that have gone, like, where do you think this thing is going to head with some of these players, and who do you think would even move?
It's so tough because I feel like we've talked about the same storylines pretty much all year. And it's
Yeah.
like, you know, when one goes out of the blender, it eventually creeps back in. Like all of a sudden this last week, you know, all this talk now about JT Miller again, about
Yeah.
potentially moving on and whatnot. I think you just gotta take it though for what the time frame is. And realistically for me now, I'm only looking at a Luke Shen trade. If anything else happens, it happens. I just don't see it with the deadline and with every team having no money. And yeah, you can retain, but you know, you look at Minnesota adding more money tonight, being, you know, the bank basically for this trade between Boston and Washington. I mean, they brought in a little bit of money. Yeah, it's only for this year, but the thing, and the other thing that's hard, really hard for like the Luke Shen thing is easy because he's a UFA this year. He's got a really reasonable cap hit, and he's got all the intangibles any playoff team would want. Like you can slide him up and down the lineup and the leadership. We know it all those things.
Right.
So that's the one that it's like that should be a tap in. And now with him sitting out, I mean, there's enough smoke there that they're doing that. these other guys like Besser, for instance, even just Besser, with 2 more years after this one, like with no team knowing what the cap's going to look like, even if you unless the Canucks say, we're going to retain 75%, which they're not going to. Like we're talking about $1 million and a half they're going to retain on the next 2 years. But I mean, we were talking about it yesterday on the show. Like Minnesota has got $15 million in dead cap next year with Suter and Parise. That's a lot of money tied up in your cap, and then you have this total random wheel of possible numbers for the cap next year. That's where those are the things that make it a stumbling block to me that anybody other than Luke Schenn gets moved, because there's just so much uncertainty and teams are capped out right now. And you have teams like the Minnesota Wild. Like, do they really want Brock Besser this year? Why do you have to make that trade within the next week to do it right now? You don't.
Yeah. Right.
You can do that one in the offseason. And even JT Miller, like his deal, I think it officially kicks in on July 1st, the same as free agency. So you can still talk about that deal at the draft and when the season concludes and all of that. So I mean, it was nice with Horvat that we finally closed one of the storylines, because it just felt like we were going on and on about, man, they should have done this, they should have done that, and they should have had the chance to re-sign him, or what are they going to get in a trade? And so it was like, okay, it's flushed out, it's done. And so that's kind of the point I'm getting at with these other moves now, because it just feels like it's just been so long of this. And I saw Elliot Friedman report yesterday in his 32 Thoughts how, if there's any team that wants a season over more than any other, it's the Canucks. Like, and I think you feel it and you see it. Like, they're done, they're spent. Like, and I give them props. They battled tonight and they beat the Blues, but I just think they're spent. And I think I get the feeling in the market's kind of spent. Like, it's like,
it's two different things that we want. Like, I mean, sure, everybody wants their team to win, and it's not like we want the Canucks to lose, as far as we're talking about the Canucks. But like, we don't want them to lose, but we do want them to lose because there's a huge, huge reward at the end. So and we've talked about this for weeks. Like, yeah, I mean, if they lost 2-1 every night or 5-4, as soon as you start, like, go figure, this is that 1 week that we always joke about every year, where like, oh yeah, they got into overtime the last 3 games in a row, and win or lose, I mean, in this case, they won, they stole a point. Now you're thinking like, okay, well, now they're going up again. And now we're getting further away from better odds. And it's just, here we go again. Now they need to lose 2 games, and we need someone else to win to regain that margin that we lost. So it is frustrating as a fan. I'm sure as the organization, they would just like it all said and done. I mean, I look at the JT Miller one. I wrote something the other day. Like, I think everybody always gets pissed off about like, oh, you can't trade in your division, you can't do this. Well, yeah, you can. If I'm the Canucks and I think, hey, who needs JT Miller? Edmonton. Who can make that in a 3-way trade? Edmonton. You find, and Minnesota is one of the teams I talked about. But I mean, if you were Edmonton, you thought, you know what, McDavid is on an absolute heater this year. Who are 2 guys like Yamamoto is going to be coming off the books? They're going to have to. I think so. I've been this. That's what the highlights have shown me anyway. I've been seeing as many Bedard as I've been seeing McDavid. But you look at a couple guys, and they could still get him, and it's going to cost them not a whole lot. And I mean, really, if you could make a playoff run this year with JT Miller as like a backup option to everything else you have, as a winger even, I mean, you're laughing, because they probably could outscore a lot of any other problems they have. You could part out a few other things. Let's say you lose a Yamamoto and a Fogle. It was kind of the 2 guys I thought, well, you're going to get 10 times that out of JT Miller. You will. And now you've got a guy that, when it comes to round 2 and round 3, you've got a guy that might take over a series, because we've seen Ryan Gessler do a thing like that. Why wouldn't you want to go after that? Well, you can still get him with 0 restrictions whatsoever. And in the offseason, maybe you do rent him and you move him away, but at least you can get him for a low cap hit this year for whatever's left, and then figure out whatever you want. And if he has a wicked run, all of a sudden JT Miller's stock goes that much higher on clearly a better team. And the Canucks are out. Maybe they retain a little bit. I mean, I think that's likely with all these trades now. But you're right, Ryan. I mean, none of these trades really have to be made unless there's a team that they feel that that's not necessarily the final piece, but maybe it's a pretty solid piece. that they can keep going with in the playoffs. And I think, I mean, who cares about if you face a guy 8 times? It's not like he's going to score every single goal every time you see him, unless it's like Tyler Toffoli a couple of years ago.
Well, the other thing is, I think you're starting to get teams are going to start to see their path as well. You know, come into pretty clear picture of like, okay, like what's in our way of getting to the final? Like, let's ignore the East because, you know, who knows? But just our path, what's that like? You know, and so if you're a team sitting there and you know, maybe you end up with a last minute injury, or you know of a guy that's banged up, and you're kind of worrying a little bit. I mean, that's why that's why I understand. And Carolina's been long rumored about JT Miller in and out and in and out, and because and Carolina and Edmonton, I kind of see similarities in that, you know, they're kind of getting to the point that it's like you got to push the pedal or park the car.
Yeah.
You know, like, because you can't just keep like running it back with the same group, even though, you always want to protect your assets and you want to keep the window open as big as possible.
Yeah.
But you eventually need to look at a group and go, okay, we're going all in on this group. We think that this group has got the pieces. And so that's why I think you are hearing some of this JT Miller stuff come back up. Because I think you are looking at, you know, that situation. It's the same reason I think, you know, the Rangers now are still apparently in on Patrick Kane, even though they added Tarasenko, because I think they might see a path a little bit, and they might believe in this group a lot and go, you know what, this might be the one that you put the chips in for, and you kind of figure out the consequences. Again, Kane being a UFA, it's a different story. I mean, I just, with JT Miller, I've been a firm believer on the show that if a team calls you, you should be like Kramer and Seinfeld before the offer's all the way out there. Just say you take it and move on. Like, and it's a hard thing because, you know, egos are a big thing in professional anything. Mm-hmm. And I think it would be a sign that Alvin and Rutherford are kind of admitting a mistake if they move them at this point. And I wonder if they're okay to swallow that pill or not, or if they think that they need to, you know, hold them because the contract's barely dry, right, of signing it. But I don't see how his contract fits with the arc of this team, which is a ways away.
They'd be revered if that happened. If they
admitted and that's what
we've said this for
week.
decades. Like, just admit you're wrong. We're okay with that. Like, well, everyone's okay with that.
I think Harmon wrote just a little while ago that Rutherford might be one of those guys who's like somewhat okay with admitting his mistakes, but not in the form of saying I made a mistake, but in the form of like, I'm going to quickly correct this problem that I made. I'm going to trade for Eric Goodbranson and then promptly swap him because I see that he's a garbage defenseman. Like, he's done this a few times, right? So I don't know if I would factor that into, like, myself personally. I don't know if I'd factor in thinking that because it is with a ton of GMs a thing. I don't think I'd force it on them saying, like, I don't think they're willing to admit the mistake. I think they are, but that's part of where I'm confused. And Ryan, I would be curious what you think. Like, what is holding up the possibility of making a JT Miller trade? Is that that it's complicated and like the Canucks side maybe doesn't want to play ball, or is it complicated in the fact that a team, you know, like Carolina maybe doesn't want to move too much in the way of assets, or they're asking for us to take on too much money from a contract standpoint? Because I don't believe teams are just coming around kicking tires saying a guy is available. What would possibly be stalling something like this from going to the next step?
Well, I think, I mean, the length of that contract is one thing. I mean, that's a big commitment, you know, beyond this year that you're bringing into the fold. And again, I think you look at other teams and they're going to look at their arcs and their organization and try and figure out if he fits in. The biggest thing that is holding up every single trade is just ultimately dollars and cents, because I think that the organization truly is in love with JT Miller. I think he's a player that I think particularly resonates probably with Rutherford, because he's got an edge and he's you know, versatile. And so I think that they really like him. But again, I also think that I think when the offseason we just went through, I think they signed Miller because Horvat didn't get done as easy as they thought it was going to happen. And then I think they thought, man, we've added this Kuzmenko kid that we don't know a lot about, but we got high hopes for. And even though we haven't improved the defense, we've, done a few things here and there, and, maybe we're a playoff team, and here we go. And so I think that that's why the Miller contract came into play and got signed. Why it would be held up now, I think, like I say, I think it's just a dollars and cents thing. And with teams not knowing the outlook to bring in 7 years, and even if the Canucks, and they would have to retain something, they'd have to, to bring in something. I think it's that. But I think, again, it's also to the point of back to kind of what I'm saying, if you're not Carolina adding him right now because you think you're going to the Cup, then why would you do it? Why would you do it right now? You don't need to. Even if you're okay with the 7-year contract, you think, what, that's actually not that bad for us. He can be a guy that's a cornerstone piece, for instance, like an Anaheim or something. He can be a guy that can be here, and we can go from there. But again, why are they doing that right now? And that's where I think your teams are just so limited right now. Right. And so even though you have teams calling, I think all those teams calling are likely contenders that want to do something right now. And they might play out to this scenario Ryan was talking about earlier about, even if you bring him in, you give it your best shot, and then maybe at that point you retain on the Canucks retained, and you can drop them even lower and sell them off to some other team before at the draft or something like that. It's just this time of year seems to be a pretty narrow market. And that's where, I remember people saying and it didn't get all the way to the deadline, but with Horvat, oh, he can have a great year, which he did. And, they can sell him at the deadline. And it's yeah, but half your teams aren't interested, even though they might be. They might be on July 1st, but at this stage of the game, they're not interested because, well, they're looking at golf courses already, and they're protective of their assets and all that and everything else. So I think that's the main thing holding up every single deal right now is cap and dollars and cents.
I know the Bally Sports thing, and Ted, I'll let you in a second. I know that's going to probably play a big deal when we talk about cap and just real dollars. Because that's about to go under, apparently. Is that, if I'm understanding?
We were talking about that on the show a bit, and that's something that I think's been kind of underreported, and maybe it's because it doesn't factor in, but I think it's going to. And basically, for people that don't know, Bally Sports swallowed up all the Fox Sports regional networks in the States. So, for instance, Sportsnet Pacific here has the Canucks games, and in Minnesota, it was Fox Sports, insert name here. They got swallowed. Bally came in. The company that owns Bally has basically gone under in a big way. They own like $1 billion or something in debt. And so it's a big problem. And it's a big problem for baseball as well, because a lot of those networks have the baseball contracts as well. So basically, I think what's going to have to happen is the teams are going to have to step in and probably save these networks, either to give them money to keep running it, or they're going to flip it over to themselves. But the bottom line is, if they start missing payments on their TV deals, which they've done one. Yeah, they have done one. I don't think there's very many left, though. I think John Shannon told us last week that they're almost all paid out for this year. So it'll be more next year problem. But still, that all of that hockey-related revenue includes that sort of stuff. And so if you start missing payments and they're already trying to pay back the money they owe from COVID, that's just going to hold the cap kind of where it is. And this is the debate that, we talk about a lot on the show. And Donnie makes the point, for fan interest, you can't have the cap go up $1 million and that's it, because nothing will change. It will stay exactly the same as it is right now. Players can't move. The free agent market's going to get impacted, and it
can't solve their problems.
It hurts your product. Interest in your league is speculation, but also actual trades happening. And so the Bally Sports thing is definitely something to monitor, because they are in a world of hurt, and I don't see a way that they get out of it without teams intervening. And again, that might be split between a baseball team and a hockey team in most markets, but it's still probably going to be a problem for hockey-related revenue.
It's crazy to me that leagues didn't have a fail-safe set in place for something like this. There isn't some sort of, you have to assume that it's always going to be I'm just shocked that there's not some kind of insurance that's available, like that it doesn't get covered somehow, because it's such an artery to the league and how it makes its money, that if anything were ever to happen to your golden goose, and that's essentially what this is, like it could be a catastrophe, and it very well could be, and it's not something we might feel right away, but it's just, and I don't know how a failsafe gets made, but it's mind-boggling that there's not something in place to protect, because it's just craziness.
Yeah, I think unfortunately, I think you know, like again, it wasn't long ago that Bally bought out all these Fox affiliates, and I think they thought that, you know, everything was good and you can sign whatever contract you want to sign, but then if they can't pay, they can't pay, and you know, then it becomes a massive headache for you. And I mean, it's, you know, there's a million things about cord cutting and ratings and, you know, everything that everyone deals with now. And I think ultimately, I think it's just become a massive problem with the parent company that owns Bally. And basically, I think that, you know, they're in such a problem that they don't have any money to give Bally Sports to keep it alive. And so now we're in the pickle we're in.
So I've got another pickle to add to this. We all saw Shea Weber got traded to Arizona. Very excited to see him. Very excited to see him play a minute for the Coyotes. Do you guys find that it's interesting, and interesting is probably the starting point, that they are eating LTIR for other teams? They're basically bankrolling cap space and real dollars for other teams. They're inheriting a few picks to, you know, to smooth everything over. Is the revenue sharing still going to support the Coyotes? Because basically how it looks is, if that is true, and again, I'm going on a little bit of an assumption here, but if the NHL and all their teams are kind of supporting these smaller teams and revenue sharing to keep things afloat, and they're then taking that money, spending it on the other teams again, you're basically like a shelter for, like, you're almost like alimony. Like, well, we're giving you all this money and this is what we're going to spend it on, so we can go do other things. We can go, you know, on that nice yacht party and have a good time while you're taking care of all of our problems over here. Like, it's like they're almost money laundering when you look at it, because they're bringing in that money and they're saying, hey, can you just pay for these things while we go out and try to win a Stanley Cup? So you almost, like, it's like a break even point. Like, we're going to keep you going. We're going to keep this team afloat, and we're going to go do this. So it's kind of a, you know, we're going to clean the cash out so we can go win a Stanley Cup, and we'll give you a few draft picks. So in the media and the public, you know, light, everything looks like it's kosher. Is it actually getting to the point where, like, again, and maybe I'm wrong in this, but that almost feels like money laundering to me?
Well, we actually talked about it today on the show, because, I mean, one of the big beefs I have is, you know, the Canucks got penalized for the Roberto Luongo contract after the fact.
Yes.
And they never should have. And yet Shea Weber's never playing another second of hockey again. And now,
I saw him 2 weeks ago at the rink in Kelowna coaching his kids. So there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, he's I mean, he's got, like, he might look fine at the rink in Kelowna, but, like, in terms of playing again,
that's what I'm saying. He's not coming back. Yeah.
No. And you're on a second team where everyone knew that that's the case. Like, everyone knew that was not happening. And yet, you know, here we are. And that's where I think critics of the salary cap and critics probably of Gary Bettman, this is the thing that they bring up. Like, that this is ridiculous, because we showed a tweet from Craig Morgan out of Arizona today where he was talking about how, you know, Chris Pronger, he went to Arizona, never played. Dave Bolin, same thing. Marian Hossa, that contract's there too. You know, and it's all about, you know, they bring the contract in, it's got a cap hit. Like, Weber is getting paid, it's under $2 million over the next 3 years in actual money, in between insurance and just what his contract's got in the back end of it.
Right.
He's getting paid very little, but his cap hit's $7 million. So that's why he is a perfect contract for the Arizona Coyotes, because they pay him nothing, but on this piece of paper here for the NHL, the cap, they're $7 million today, closer to the cap floor than they were yesterday, and that's what they're still $15 million or something away from it for next year anyway. Yeah. I this is where we've been talking about a lot. I think they
brother.
need to clean up the cap in general. Like
Mhm.
I think that I'd be okay if they went the route of a luxury tax where you have a bottom end of a cap that's if you're within it, you're within it. And then you have a high end, much like baseball. And if you want to pay into the high end, then you're going to pay, and that money is going to go back to the teams that can't pay, the Arizonas, the smaller market teams. They're gonna, but the teams that can pay, well, they're gonna get that extra benefit of doing that, and they're gonna pay above, like the Yankees in baseball, for instance. They'll just bleed into the cap, the luxury tax, no big deal, and we'll give the Baltimore Orioles money, and everything will be fine. But this is what I like. This stuff with Arizona. The Luongo thing was a farce. I just think it's too. It's not working the way it should, and that's where I think that they need to change it. And yeah, I mean the trade yesterday with Arizona, I was really like, this is lame. Like,
well, you just laugh. You're like, of course, right, sure.
Yeah, I mean, but you're allowing teams' problems to just be thrown away, and yet again, Shea Weber's never going to play a second of hockey, but he's eligible to be traded around the National Hockey League, no problem.
Yeah. Just like papering a guy down to your AHL squad, right? It's like literally the same idea, except you're talking about it with a high-profile player and a number that says $7 million on cap hit, right? I mean, the Luongo thing just seems so crazy because had Shea Weber like legit retired, not long-term injuries, but legit retired, I mean, it could have crippled the Predators. Like,
yes.
Or sorry, or is it the Predators or Montreal?
It would have been the Preds.
The Preds, right?
Because I can't remember exactly how it worked, but basically they were on the hook for that when they made the trade. That if he retires, the back end of this deal is coming back on you guys, and you're going to be in a world of hurt. And that's where it doesn't make sense to me, because so Luongo's honest, and he retires, and there's the penalty. Yeah. But Weber is retired. He's retired.
Oh yeah.
But the league would never let him retire officially.
He hasn't officially retired, but he's retired. But physically he won't be able to pass a physical, so he gets LTI'd, and there we go. I mean, Marian Hossa,
a physical in the fall. Yeah.
Right. And Marian Hossa, right? Marian Hossa all of a sudden got allergic to hockey equipment, literally. Yeah. Developed an allergy to hockey equipment, and so LTIR. He can't play. And so then that contract gets thrown around. And I mean, again, like, look, there's a million cap issues with the Vancouver Canucks that caused them problems that they did to themselves outside of the Luongo deal.
That's just normal stuff. We can be mad about those for different reasons.
Exactly.
We're mad at those all the time. I like to dredge up old stuff from the past.
Yeah. I'm bringing up these funny things.
I kind of do feel like I'm an old man when I bring up the Luongo thing, because it feels like I just need somebody to be like, just let it go. It's not.
No conspiracy.
You can't though. You can't.
I know.
It's so stupid.
Well, I mean, it's true though, right? Like you're asking a team to be held to the cross on a technicality, and you're okay with that. But then the league is not going to allow Shea Weber to retire 3 years ago, say 2 years ago, because it would literally just cripple the franchise, and they would never allow that to happen, right? So. Yeah, what goes on behind closed doors is just craziness.
They keep making Arizona happen, though. Like, you see Batman on his post, like, we need you guys to come and vote and pay for this arena. And like, you just took on $17 million in long-term injury. Like that, we can't support that with 4,500 fans in the building. It doesn't work. I mean, they almost need, like you talk about a luxury tax, they almost need to combine it with what the NFL's doing and have guaranteed contracts as well. Because then you have an opportunity to cut a guy and like, here's how much you can make if you play everything out. But at the same time, like, we can cut you and then you just don't make anything. And I mean, it probably works in the players' way as well, because there's going to be some guys like, well, if things didn't work out here, I know I'm still pretty good. I can go sign with these guys. I can ink a new contract. I didn't make the back 10 million, but now I can sign for 30 million over here. I mean, it's not a terrible idea. And I mean, I think the NHL needs to start, looking at like, hey, maybe we need to hybrid something here, because the salary cap in its, in its infancy was a good idea. It kept some of the teams honest, and it kept the Detroits and the Colorados and the New Yorks from adding every possible star they could. And then it kept everything, with some parity. But now it's just like, well, now we've read it. All of our lawyers have figured out all the loopholes. and here's what we can do, and all it's going to cost us is a draft pick and maybe, a guy that we maybe didn't see panning out in our future anyway. And look at us, we can go make a Stanley Cup run, and all of our problems are down in the desert. I mean, it's
and the other problem with the cap that we've talked about is it's kind of working in a way where it penalizes teams that are really good at drafting and developing. The Tampa Bay Lightning had to offload guys year after year that they drafted and developed, but they were up against the cap and they knew that the number was coming up, and so they had to move along. But that should not be the case. Like that. If you are just drafting really well and developing really well, and then guys are up on, their deals and they're trying to get market value, which you can't blame them, then I don't think that they should be getting penalized. If you want to go out and sign every free agent and cripple yourself, or trade for a really bad contract, I'm not going to name any names, but Oliver Ekman-Larsson.
No, that's a good contract. That's hey, we're all friends here. That's a great. No, I'm just sorry. I'm kidding.
That one's good,
That one's around forever. That's like top 5, one of the worst contracts ever. And we're talking about a guy who's still playing hockey.
Yeah, and if you want to really depress yourself, go to Cap Friendly and do the buyout if you bought him out this July, and it's bad.
What's the number?
Very
you did
bad.
It already?
Yeah, we did it already, and next year his cap ends up going down to like under $200,000. Like it's really low for next year. But then there's like 3 years of like $6 million or something, and then 3 years of like almost $4 million, and then
Bobby Bonilla of
2
Bobby
years
Bonilla.
after. Oh yeah, like he gets paid out until like 2031 or something, or the cap. Sorry, I shouldn't say paid out.
The cap.
But the cap hit against the Canucks is on there until like 2031. And my thing with that is, people call him for a buyout or whatever. Why? Like I know he's bad, but like why buy him? Like for what? There's no prospect that you're blocking to get to the team.
No.
So, and they're not going to be good next year. They're probably maybe the year after that. Like we're still a ways away. So what? Like just keep them around.
For the same reasons as this year, hold on to him.
Yeah,
you're not going to be any better. You're not going to be any worse.
Exactly.
They just want to. It's the death by the thousand cuts thing, right? It's not specifically. It's not specifically OEL's contract that's hurting. It's hurting them, obviously. It's the Meyer contract and the.
Oh, I mean, the list goes on of all the guys. I mean,
they're just it's everywhere, and there's not a specific way that you can escape that, and you just want to have to let it just run its course. And it's funny because everybody was clamoring to have Eriksson traded, and then it was like, yeah, okay, we traded Eriksson, we got OEL, and it was like, no, not that one. That's the only one you weren't supposed to trade for.
Yeah.
So where does this bring us to like the offseason? Obviously, we talked about guys like Besser that might make more sense in the offseason. And I don't think all of the trade talk is going to go away with JT Miller anytime soon. I think it's going to continue on into. So like 2 questions is when will the trade talk go away on a guy like JT? Is it just that winning solves everything? And the second part would be what happens in the offseason? Are they specifically targeting trying to get rid of guys like a Tyler Myers and other contracts of that ilk? Are they looking at moving guys like Beauvillier? Like, do they have plans to try to move on from some of this stuff? Or is it like our hands are kind of tied at this point? We sort of have to let these guys get into trade season next year.
Ted,
well, I mean, I think
he already said he didn't have any bombshells tonight.
Theoretically speaking.
Okay.
I think the Miller trade talk will officially die down when that and if that no movement clause kicks in on that new contract. I mean, because then it's a whole different kettle of fish. That he's got to that the Canucks are going to have to deal with. So I think, they're going to get through the deadline and then it's going to come back around again. No, I think at the draft still it'll be there for sure. Okay. It'll be there at the draft. But then after that, if the extension kicks in, then I think it's pretty much he's going to be here. Unless again, he's got a no. I think it's a modified. No, I'm pretty sure it's just a no move clause. So he's going to have to improve wherever he goes, and that list is probably going to be pretty short. Rutherford said they need major surgery. They've got to do something with that decor. And again, like Myers, I believe, gets paid out a bonus on July 1st. And that is apparently one of the hiccups to his deal. Like when that goes through, people could see potentially a summer trade happen. And because his contract is not as bad. And maybe you get somebody that wants to come in and take that off their hands. The bottom line is they just don't have a lot of names that people want. And I mean, it's true because it's either bad contracts or it's guys that are underperforming, and so it's like, like what are we going to really return here on them? I mean, but the bottom line is that this offseason needs to be dedicated fully to the defense. Like, because in my opinion, you're for sure bringing back Hughes, obviously, and you're for sure, because you're stuck with it, bringing back OEL. After that, if anybody calls you on any of their names, you say yes, and you can fill out the paperwork later of what you want to give us for them, and move
future
on.
considerations. I hear that guy's popular.
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. And not only just in terms of moving guys out, that needs to be the philosophy with this draft. I mean, they need to go heavy on defensemen. Maybe not with that first pick, because there's not a stud defenseman that's going to be right there. It sounds like maybe in the top 10 there might be one, but where they're going to draft, likely not Bedard, is not going to be in an area I don't think you really want to reach for a defenseman. But after that, they just need to get more in the system for defensemen, because that's how you draft and develop. That's how you get those guys in your lineup, because you either overpay on July 1st for the rarities that get there, or you try and trade for them. But that's such a tough thing to get out of teams as well, because they really like their defensemen. So that needs to be their main offseason focus. And I mean, Rutherford, when he says, they need major surgery, like, I'm kind of I'll believe it when I see it. Like, I just think we've heard a lot about names, and I just don't necessarily know that they're going to move. If they move, great. I just don't necessarily know that you are going to make something work with Besser because of his production and the contract. I don't necessarily know you're going to make something work with Miller for a variety of reasons. And so, like, the list goes on of guys that, we're hearing that are being called on, but will something actually go through? I don't know. And I don't know if the offseason really changes a lot of those conversations.
I mean, that's kind of a bummer.
No, I totally. But again, though, and this kind of goes back to what we've been talking about. If the original number comes back and they go up $4 million in the cap, a lot of conversations change, right? Like, a lot of that stuff changes, where maybe a team wants to bring in a Besser at a slightly reduced rate because it's change of scenery. I mean, the Minnesota thing is just too perfect. So, maybe they do finally, pull the trigger on that. The other name you mentioned was Beauvillier. I think he's a guy that I think they bring back next year and hope that maybe he gets off on like a really heater and they can move him, because he's a UFA next year. Like, and so maybe you have him, at the deadline, that somebody wants to add a little bit of depth in their forward group, and he's a guy that they would like. I don't think that there's going to be a team out there that's seen enough from him in Vancouver that believes, like, hey, we should get him this offseason. I think he's more of a deadline acquisition next year.
Yeah, like just another asset, like, just to manage down the road, right?
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. I think right now, again, if you're not named, in my eyes, if you're not named Pettersson and Hughes, you should seriously consider taking the trade, whatever's being offered up, because this team needs assets in a bad way. There's nothing in Abbotsford. There really is not much out there. And so you can't be capped out, rebuilding, retooling, whatever the hell you want to call it, and have nothing in your farm. Those three things cannot.
Not true. If you're the Vancouver Canucks, you can easily be all those things.
They have been happening here, Max.
Yeah, exactly.
What am I saying? Yeah.
It's not that you can't be it. They're proving you can be all those things.
That's a good point.
What's behind door number 2? Oh, that's a cap recapture, Jim.
Yeah, exactly.
Yay, cap recapture.
Yes.
So we saw just a little earlier a big trade for the Ottawa Senators, Chicago Blackhawks. Nikita Zaitsev, 4th round draft pick, 2nd round draft pick. They take that nasty ass contract. Ryan and I were talking earlier, and he had some thoughts about what it would take to get a guy like OEL off this roster. And we have differing opinions on what the value is in terms of, like, draft picks to move a guy like OEL. What do you think it would take to move OEL off this roster?
Well, I mean, you're gonna have to retain, obviously. But I mean, you're talking. I mean, here's the thing: is, again, when you look at like for instance, Boston today, right, when they made their move and they're giving up a 1st round pick or whatever. Well, they don't care. because that
No.
they're hoping that first round pick is 32nd
Second round
overall.
pick.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where it's tough, because if you're the Vancouver Canucks and you, let's say, because it's looking like they're going to have 2 firsts next year, because it looks like that Islanders pick's going to move. So if you said to somebody, here's an unprotected first round draft pick, and it's the Canucks unprotected because they might be top 5 again next year, I mean, that would be something obviously very intriguing to someone. But again, it goes to that old thing of like, so like where does OEL fit for a team? Because if they want that unprotected pick, like they might be in a win now mode anyway, that they don't really care about that prospect in 2 seasons or maybe 1 season, whatever that you get from that unprotected pick. It would start with a first round pick for sure. But see, and this is where like I've always thought, like, can you get creative enough? This is where I thought could they get creative enough with Horvat and stick somebody with Horvat and send those 2 assets off into the sunset and swallow a lesser return, instead of maybe a first round pick, maybe you get a second round pick, and maybe you don't get, Beauvillier, even though the Islanders really want to move it or something. I just think, but the problem is, again, how many assets in this organization do you have that you can stick with something to get rid of it? And ultimately, all they have is like first round picks. That would be appealing to people. They don't have that prospect that they can put with it. And they don't have, and the other problem is they just don't have a bounty of picks that they can go, hey, okay, man, we'll give you like 2 seconds or something because we've got 2/3 because of this other trade or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's where draft capital becomes so important, because it's not just look at as, oh, okay, we're going to draft this many players this year. It's what can you do with that draft capital potentially to either fix some of your problems that you have or get rid of some of your problems, in like the case of OEL, for instance. And that's where teams like Ottawa, that they benefit from that. Other teams that when they stockpile picks, they benefit from that. I mean, Chicago, they don't really have any problems left to fix because they've sent everybody pretty much out the door. But they have a ton of draft picks now because of it. Because now they're in a
draft
position,
class of a new team.
Exactly, and they're in a position that they can bring in an ugly contract in exchange for more picks, and that's how you do it with the rebuild. So I mean, the OEL thing, it would just be so hard to put an exact trade together, but for sure, like I say, it would start with a first round pick and heavy retention.
I want to add something to that. So we've been talking about OEL, and Ted, you bring up like what's it going to take. Ryan, you've brought this up already a couple times on the show, but I mean, who wants him? He's not good. Would you be willing to say, yeah, we'll take a first round pick and we'll offload this bad hockey player and his bad money, but we get a first round pick? Would you, if you were a GM, what would entice you to say, yeah, this guy's crap, but why would you want that? Like, why would you want a bad contract, a bad player for 1 draft pick? You'd be willing to be like, hey, we'll suffer for you. Who really wants to suffer that much? And it's a defenseman. It's not even a forward. Like, one of our top 6 guys has to be, like, we're not talking about Sheldon Surrey anymore, where we're just going to bury him and like, you just finish out your contract in the AHL and we'll call it a day. No, like, you're likely going to have to roster this guy in your top 6, and he is not good. Unfortunately, he's not good for the Canucks currently. He was not good for the Arizona Coyotes before. Why would anyone say, okay, well, if you're going to give me a first round pick, that's great. Thank you so much. But the guy sucks. Why should I take on a first round pick and bad money for the guy that like I actually don't want? Like that makes no sense to me.
There's 2 things. First of all, there'll always be another team that thinks that they're going to get something out of him. Right? Sure. I mean, nobody saw this resurgence from Erik Karlsson in San Jose.
Fair enough, yeah.
And so everyone's going to think that, you get him out of the media bubble in Vancouver, and maybe you lessen his minutes per night, and maybe, this and that. So there's always going to be that. And there's going to potentially be a scenario where you are a team like Chicago, for instance, where you've got nothing.
You just need somebody.
And you're in Arizona's boat, and you need money to get to the floor. Because you either have nothing really committed, or you have a bunch of young guys, and that's all LEC money, ELC money, and that's giving you nothing really in terms of a cap hit. And so that's where you, I think, would be interested in taking that OEL contract off your hands. And again, can the Canucks retain enough? I mean, we're talking like if they're reportedly talking about a maximum of 1 to 1.5 on Besser. So if that's the max on that, if they did the same with OEL, would that be enough to entice someone to take him?
It'd be like 2 to 3.
It would have to be a lot. And that's where I think, again, like to me, I would be there's very few moves that this management team can do that would floor me. That would be one that would floor me if they could somehow get out of that deal without having to retain like 75% of the contract. Because I just don't. It just there's too many things that are like he's aging, he's got a bad deal. Does he fit with what we have here already? And for the most part, most teams are going to say no. Then why would you do it?
Mm-hmm. It really is like the perfect storm of mediocrity for this team, right? Like there's players on this team that are playing so below value that they can't be dealt. The only way of moving them, because they have so few assets, is to deal picks. And they're so bad that they can't deal those picks because those picks will be good and important. Like everybody says, you got to fix the defense. I don't know how it's going to happen. I just can't see a path.
Yeah, and that's the really hard part. And that's where, I mean, I was very surprised there wasn't a defenseman included in the Horvat deal. I really thought that there was going to be something there, even if he's a guy that, has been soured on in an organization, but, you're going to take a flyer on just something. Just something that you're trying here, because Riley Stillman hasn't worked out, and that's pretty much the only move that they've done to try and fix it.
Well, the Bear trade maybe would be the other one. And
of course, yeah, the Ethan Bear trade as well. But, I mean, that's a very valid thing. I mean, where is the path to this? But again, like, can you get creative enough? To me, the only trade chip they seriously have that I think they're seriously going to consider moving is Demko. That, and especially if the Kings are involved and LA's got such an embarrassment of riches in prospects and in picks, that are they interested enough? Are they confident enough he's going to rebound from his injuries that they're willing to take the flyer on him, and you can pry something out of there for a defenseman? Or at the very least, can you trade enough of these guys, maybe for draft capital, and enough capital that you can build something up and not get a top 4 guy, but maybe get, again, a kind of an Ethan Bear situation where a guy that's fallen out of favor in an organization that they're clogged up with their decor already, and they're willing to part with them. Like that's the market that they're going to target, or they're going to, pay through the nose on July 1st. And that's the other thing that they're going to do. But I do think that they are very cognizant now of the cap hell they're in, and every penny is going to be really looked over before they commit to it in any position. And it's too bad because like last year they had an opportunity with a little bit of room. Mm-hmm. And I didn't necessarily think Mikheyev was the answer to them, using some of their money, but they did anyway. And I mean, that just adds to your problems.
Well, yeah. I think that's what I worry about. Like I see them make the Horvat trade, and I feel like, okay, they realize they're an alcoholic now. They're admitting they have a problem, right? Like, and they're making these trades, and then days later, Kuzmenko, right? And obviously we all love Kuzmenko and what he does, but like, was that the smart thing to do, or was the smarter thing to do to go add assets? And then the Mikheyev thing in the offseason, like you were talking about, when there's clear problems on defense. And I'm not sure which version of this Canucks regime is going to show up in the offseason during free agency. I have no idea.
Yeah.
So like, I mean,
the Kuzmenko one for me, again, it goes back to how many chips did they have that could bring them something back into the organization. And to me, Kuzmenko had performed at enough of a level that you needed to cash in on one of your few chips. And again, like this is, we've talked about this a bit on the show. There's a separation between we got to trade this guy because we don't like this player, and we need to trade this guy because this guy's good and he's the only way we're going to improve this team. And that's the case here. Kuzmenko's overperformed. He's been great. He had a hiccup when Talkett got here, but that seems to be gone now. He seems like one of the best guys in the locker room. Every
Yeah.
box is in his favor.
Great hair.
But again, when you're
hair.
looking at the roster on paper and you're trying to fix it, how many guys are there to fix it? And Kuzmenko is one of those guys. The contract I don't really have a ton of a problem with. Again, it's and like the number
adding to the problem though.
It's just how are you going to improve it? It's that main question. And when you don't have all of these things that you can just be like, oh well, you know, this guy next year will take a step and he'll probably graduate from Abbotsford to here or whatever. You don't have any of that. And so I think that's the biggest worry for this hockey team is how are you going to improve it with the current pieces in the organization and not being a lot of chips that you can cash in on to improve it in the trade market.
I have a question. Ted, what were you going to say, Ted?
I think mine is also, I also have a question, but.
No, my question's going to like take us towards the end of the show. Yours could
Okay.
continue an hour and a half. So.
I'll ask one more question because I
Okay.
don't think it's very long, and I just want a number out of you so that I can just go write this in my little book somewhere and see how close.
Okay.
What's Elias Pettersson's next contract?
Oh man.
Listen to the show tomorrow.
I mean, like I don't think 10 million a year is out of the realm.
No.
Because here again, when you have the situation the Canucks are in, like everything is in his favor for his case of the number that he wants to write on a piece of paper.
His
Like I
bounce back is
legitimately
looking
feel
great.
like it's going to be like one of those like movies or TV shows where they write a number on a piece of paper and slide it across the table, and then they just walk out the room like that's it. Like there's no negotiation here. That's it.
Yeah,
And I
let's
mean,
never
and then
speak
if
of it
you
again.
if you add on top of that him being the captain, which may or may not happen, but let's say it
Likely.
does,
We feel like
Likely.
it's gonna, yeah.
that money just keeps going up and up and up and up. So I
Yeah.
mean, like to me, 10 million is not. I don't think that's insane that you're going to hear that number unless something happens that production wise he really dips. But I think again,
Like the overtime goal he scored tonight, end to end.
I mean, yeah,
Further
and
proof.
and it's even little things like like we laughed a lot at the All-Star game and that whole weekend and whatever. But little things like him winning the hardest shot, they will bring up. Like JP Barry and him will be like we were on the league stage and we won a event at the All-Star game.
Wearing your jersey.
That's what happened. So I do think they're going to probably look at it hard this summer when they're allowed to do that. They're allowed to open that up this summer. Rick's been hearing that a lot, that's what's going to happen. And I think that because I think that they really, really believe in him. I like, again, it's Pettersson and Hughes are completely untouchable off the table unless somebody offered them something stupid, which is never going to happen outside of NHL 23. So, and I think when they make that first call, I think that they're going to be heading in that direction of 9, 9.5, 10, somewhere in that neighborhood. And I don't know how the Canucks really counter without saying, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, they already offered him the stupid contract, and it was a bridge contract. So,
well, I mean, and
what we
again,
do
and
about
that's one that burns you. And we've talked a lot about what's going on in Buffalo, and Buffalo just keeps locking up their core guys to 7-8 year deals. They're young guys that they're betting on are going to pay off and that they've seen enough out of. I don't know.
Pettersson at 7. Jeez.
I mean, that's the thing, right? I mean, these are the what ifs that you look at. And it's not even just, man, that number would have been so nice. It also just would have been, man, isn't it great that you don't have to talk about a contract with him for another 5 years or something?
Exactly.
Because it just seems like the bell is always ringing here. Like it's
the
always the next guy.
Yeah.
The next guy. This guy's up. Now this guy's up. Like, I mean, look at we moved within 30 seconds from Horvat to, Pettersson can have conversations this summer.
Yeah. After the break. Yeah.
And, and then it's like, and before you know it, guess what? Hughes is entering in that window where he's up. And it just goes on and on and on. And yeah, I mean, the Pettersson one, I think a lot of people knew from the instant they were screwed. The Canucks, that is, were screwed. And so this is what they were going to have to do. And as Drance always says, the receipt just keeps coming back over and over day after day.
It sucks. You know what? But I mean, I love them. I love the Canucks.
I said to my wife the other day, I said, if I wasn't doing what I'm doing, I don't know if I'd be watching this crap. as I was sitting looking at the TV. And
You
she goes,
can't.
"Oh, come on." And I'm
No,
like, "Yeah, you're probably right."
my heart is still with the team, but I mean, this show has been a lot of fun for us. But at the same time, like if you and I weren't doing the show, Ted, like if you just took that off the board and just decided, like, you know what, we're gonna move on from the show. I don't know how much, like, I will still live and die with Vancouver Canucks, and there will be a day, hopefully, that it happens where things get better and maybe they win, maybe not. But I mean, I think a lot of us could probably go the way of the late 90s, early 2000s. Like, you know what? I need a break. I need a break from this because it's not healthy for me anymore. And it wasn't for me. I mean, I remember the whole Messier thing and, the whole West Coast Express thing with Scott Rintoul right now is absolutely amazing. So
It's really
not a paid plug, but oh my goodness, I can't wait for tomorrow's episode. But I mean, I personally took a bit of a break. Like I remember when the Orca came out, I'm like, what team's that? And I look, I'm like, whoa, that's the Canucks. Like I was a lot younger, but I had gotten out enough where I'm like, this isn't fun for me. And now as an adult, I think if I didn't have this, like it isn't fun. I mean, it's kind of fun, but
it's kind of fun right now.
It's kind of fun right now, but I mean, at the same time, like if we didn't have that vested interest in it, as far as either monetarily or whatever, I mean, yeah, I think there's a lot of people that would probably just peace out for a while because, I mean, it hurts a little bit. Like it's tough to take that. At least with Edmonton and Toronto, like, you know, they were always getting first overall picks, or it's Toronto and they're always trying to do their thing. At least there's something to go on that. But like the Canucks, like we don't even have that. They don't even have that.
I think the difference is that, like, I think still to this point, and I've always said this, that if it ever gets this bad again, then I will take a little bit of a break, but I'll still be a fan. Maybe I just won't be watching every game so intently. But when they start rolling out, you know, Brendan Convery and Harry York as your number 1 and number 2 centers, like that's maybe when I'm going to take my break. For now, like I still feel like it's worth the price of admission to see a guy like Petey go off and Hughes handle the play from the back end. So I'm still okay with it at this point because I still feel like there's studs there that are making it worth my time. But I'm not down with watching František Kachura and Harry York and no, I don't need any of that stuff. That wasn't even Cap back then, and that was just a straight up bad team. So
yeah,
we're not there.
It is a weird time. It's a weird time around the franchise, and I bring this up with the guys because I'm 31. I'll be 32 in April, and so for me, and a lot of fans that are around my age that kind of came in around the same time. Like I was born in 91. So like West Coast Express era is kind of my first real recollections of watching the Canucks. This is your first kick in the nuts time as a Canucks fan. Like it's so hard right now because it's just dark. But the wave of, even though there wasn't, you know, cups here, there, and everywhere, and cup appearances here, there, and everywhere, the wave of talent that you were watching night in and night out from the West Coast Express era into, you know, the Sedins, then into 2011, like that period was pretty fantastic. And so amazing. That's where it's like, you know, again, for a lot of fans that are around my age, it's the first time that you're like, man, it can really, you know, it's not a guarantee that the playoffs are going to be a thing. And it's not a guarantee that you're going to have that next prospect that you could be talking about. And it's not a guarantee that this guy's going to keep developing. And so that's where it's been interesting is, you know, seeing the reaction of this time in the Canucks history with a lot of newer fans, you know, dealing with it.
Yeah. Let's finish off on a strong note. Rick didn't give us any scoops for you. But maybe you can like break down that fourth wall and like we can get in like the questions people like, do you guys wear pants on the show?
Yes, we all wear pants.
Okay.
Donnie wears usually like track pants.
I could see that.
Yet he wore jeans to my wedding.
That's true. We do remember that. That was great. Not for you.
But yeah.
Tell me he also wears Birkenstocks. That would be great. That would make
the whole Donnie a ton of times on Sportsnet and Sports Page for that matter wore shorts like and then the top half was his look like suit.
Right.
But these guys, not it's more casual than like a proper like, newscast or even like a proper like sportscast or anything like that. But so thankfully they all wear shorts. There was one time Rick came out of the washroom and his shirt was undone. That was a nice experience. Other than that,
Little unbuttoned tubby there, or what?
I don't know exactly what was going on in there, and I'm probably we didn't ask too many questions
Like George
about what was
Costanza?
going on in there. But yeah, he just kind of came in the room and he found it weird that we found it weird, which was incredible.
Yeah, like don't make it weird, guys. It's only weird
Yeah.
to make it weird.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well,
How long with those guys now? Real quick though. Sorry, how long with those guys now?
I started interning at 1040 in October of 2011. And so, and that was with BMAC and Taylor.
Right.
So I've been with Donnie since that time. And then Rick, like I knew of, but then I didn't know him until everything happened with 650 and he came back to 1040. And then like working with him day in, day out, that's just been on this show. So that's been like 2.5 years now, which feels like it's been 10. So
wild.
Yeah.
Okay, so no pants, Rick
Unbuttoned shirt.
might unbutton or more in the washroom, pulls a George Costanza. What's like one more thing, like pulling away the curtain that like people would want to know? Like what's something that goes on that is slightly embarrassing, not for you because we like you, but like for Rick or Donnie that like we probably know, but maybe we don't know. What are we missing out on?
I really wish everyone could have seen the performance Rick put on at my place over Christmas. He came over. We had like a Christmas get together at my house, and Donnie came, and BMAC came actually, and his wife, and Rick came, and Rick polished off a bottle of Crown and was in quite the mood. Let's just say that by the end of it. So much so that my parents were also there, and he, on his way out, fell onto them while saying goodbye. Like he was kind of like trying to like shake their hands. And so then he fell onto them. And then it was like 15 seconds of him just there. And it was like that borderline of like, is he passed out? Is he asleep? Like, can somebody wake him? And then he just kind of like got up and like left. And that I really wish everyone could have seen that evening, because that was an experience in itself. I also truly wish everyone could see the way Dhaliwal talks off the air on the phone to either Durant's or to one of the agents he knows really well, and it's just screaming and yelling and F-bombs, and then like, okay, talk to you later, bye. And he's gone. That's something that I really wish was PG enough for everyone to see.
See, Rick has been on our show. He's great. He's thrown us a few bones as well for some stuff. So unfortunately, we're gonna have. I mean, we're live, so there's gonna be some things that likely get clipped for tomorrow. Very sorry, Rick. I expect the DMs to be littered, but he's a good dude. Ryan, any final things from you? Anything going on if you want to promote? Obviously, your show if you like, or maybe something else going on. Do you have like a rock band you're part of?
Shameless plug time.
Anything you got?
I've got nothing. I just, obviously we're just having a ton of fun on the show, and the number one goal with the show when we started it was we're going to try and keep what we had at 1040 alive as close to as possible, even though it's a new medium. Right. And so that's been like the most important thing to us. And so we just have a ton of fun, because you shouldn't take it too seriously at the end of the day. Even though things make you angry about sports or whatever, it's still sports, and it should be fun and entertaining and all of that. And that's what we try and do. And that's what you guys try and do here, which I really appreciate as well, because that's what it should be all about. So, other than that, I appreciate you guys asking me to come on. It's been a blast, and I'm depressed because it's another hour of Canucks talk that I usually don't have in my life. But it was good talking.
That should make up for it. Maybe we like net
absolutely
break even.
Yes.
Well, I mean, I can be like completely honest in saying that I think it's even better than it was before. I enjoy listening now more than I ever have, and so you guys do a fantastic job over there. So please keep up the good work.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that from both of you.
I just thank you for all the things you've done. You've influenced my my t-shirt wardrobe. Thank you very much for that. We had
Yeah,
some concerts.
my wife's my mother-in-law, she asked me the other day how many I have, and I told her I think I have enough band funny t-shirts that I could go 2 months of shows with no repeats.
Bro, that's awesome. It's
Yeah.
also scary.
It's
a
also
married,
a hoarder thing. Like it's
as a
close
married
to,
man, we all know that's scary and
Yeah.
awesome for the guys. Very
Yeah.
scary. It's like maybe I need to cut back. And like, oh,
Yeah.
did you see that one tour shirt? It's like
Yeah.
a Japanese one where they do this.
Yeah.
I gotta have that. Well, it's 2.5 months now. So
Yeah, well, and I got a bunch of concerts coming up, so there's going to be more bought. And
there you
so,
go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Killers,
Yeah.
Rage Against the Machine, maybe New Linkin
Exactly.
Park and Foo Fighters.
Yeah.
We're all good.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
Ryan, this has been a lot of fun. I mean, I've been hoping to have you on the show for a while. I think, like I said, you're the glue that holds Donnie and Dhali together, and we couldn't be more than happy to have you on here. Ted, I don't know if you got any final words aside from.
Well, I guess in the words of Rick, okay, gotta go bye.
this was a good show. Good show. Oh man. On behalf of two Ryans and Ted, this is the PP1 podcast on Crier Media.